Okay, so last week I ended up going 9-7 in the money line thanks to that Bills disaster on Monday night, and I was 2-2 in best bets. We were gonna have a winning week, and then Buffalo disappointed me at the end. Obviously, the kickoff return, the Josh Allen or the punt return, excuse me, the Josh Allen turnovers caused me to go 2-5 in best bets. So now we're here at week 2, and there's a lot of interesting lines here on this game. There's some very tricky games, in my opinion, that I would stay away from. There are 9 road teams favored, which seems a lot for week 2 in this season, and some teams that are 0-1 that we had some high hopes for that are looking to bounce back. So without further ado, these are my NFL 2023 week 2 money line predictions for every game and my 5 best bets. Kicking it off, Thursday night football, Vikings at Eagles. Philly is favored by 7 points. Listen, as an Eagles fan, I was obviously not impressed by barely surviving against New England, who has no offensive skill positions, and they made those wide receivers look legit in week 1. I think a lot of it has to do with Russ. I think a lot of it has to do with new coordinators. Philadelphia did not play a lot of starters in the preseason. I do think that the Eagles are going to be fine. We know how they handled Minnesota in week 2 of last year. Minnesota's got that in the back of their brain. They have a new defensive coordinator in Brian Flores, who is going to need time to once again implement his scheme over there in Minnesota. But the other thing here is the Vikings are mad. They got shot by Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Bucks week 1 in their house. And the best thing about football, they always say, basketball, baseball, you can erase, bad games, bad losses by just going out there and playing the next day. Well, Minnesota has a short week. They can get week 1 out of their mind. They're going to burn the tape. They're going to come in with revenge on their mind from last year and something to prove. It's why I think this game is going to be a little bit tougher than most people think for Philly. Now, Minnesota's dealing with some offensive line injuries, but for Philadelphia, James Bradbury, Nakobe Dean, both out on the defensive side of the ball. This game will all come down to if Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, that Eagles defensive line can get after Minnesota and make Kirk Cousins uncomfortable. I think Cousins actually plays well given his prime time history. Philadelphia may cover by a touchdown. I think this game is closer than people think, but I'm going to take the Eagles to win the game. Next game, Seattle has to come in desperate here. They got embarrassed by the Rams at home last week. So they're going to play well. But this is West to East Coast in a dome against Jared Goff and that eye-powering Detroit Lions offense, who is a lot more talent than what that Rams offense had last week. I think the Lions are going to be able to dominate Seattle up front. I think they play well. Though I think Seattle once again plays well. I think Geno Smith gets back going. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, those offensive weapons give Detroit more problems than what Kansas City gave them last week. I think this is a very close game. The line is about right. It's Detroit minus 5.5. I think either way, either team could win here by a touchdown. I'm going to take the Lions to win late. But I'm not going to bet the spread. Speaking of weird games, this is one of the weirder games on the weekend because Green Bay is now favored by 1.5 on the road against Atlanta. And Atlanta, that game against Carolina last week was weird. I mean, Desmond Ridder at one point was 4 for 4 for 0 yards. They refused to run the ball downfield. They didn't get Kyle Pitts involved. They didn't get Drake London involved. You would think Arthur Smith's going to hear that from the media this week. They're going to get those guys more involved. For his sake, I hope he gets Bijan Robinson more involved because he may already be their best offensive player. The explosion in his hand is unbelievable. Now, I think Atlanta is going to have some tape on Jordan Love. I think they're going to try to figure him out. I think it was the element of surprise last week the Bears were not ready for. But Green Bay seemed well coached. They're going to run the football against an Atlanta front that isn't great outside of Calais Campbell. Green Bay is building momentum, and now this is their second straight game on the road. They know they have a huge opportunity here to go 2-0 on the year when most people pick them to finish 3rd or 4th in the division. To go 2-0 on the road gives Green Bay high hopes for the season, and with Detroit on potential upset alert against Seattle, with Minnesota tough game against Philadelphia, Chicago now in desperation mode against Tampa. I think Green Bay seizes the opportunity. Atlanta knows they are in a pretty weak division. I think Jordan Love once again goes out here, and Green Bay starts the year 2-0 on the road. Next game, I was debating about picking this game as one of my best bets, but I stayed away from it because I don't trust Justin Fields, the Bears. They go on the road to Tampa. Now, Matt Eberflus is a defensive guy. He should be able to rattle Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, though they do have a lot of weapons. The Bears mightily disappointed in week one. They're going to come out. They're going to be angry. They're going to want to play well. This is a huge game for Justin Fields, who, just like last year, looked over his skis. He has not won enough in the National Football League. He only has 5 wins right now, 5 career wins on his resume. That needs to change. The Bears cannot start 0-2 with this regime and this era, or Eberflus may be out quicker than we think, and they'll be looking for a new quarterback because this is Justin Fields' last chance. He has DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Khalil Herbert against a pretty bad Tampa secondary. They gave up a lot of yards to Justin Jefferson. I think DJ Moore has a big game. I think the Bears win. I'm not going to best bet them. If I was, I would definitely take the Bears side here. Tampa is favored by 3 at home, which is about right because you get 3 points at home. But at the end of the day, I still think Chicago is the better football team, and it's pretty much a must-win for them. Speaking of a must-win and a good showing, this is Buffalo. Now, I don't like taking huge lines. The line is 9.5, so I'm not going to take it. I think there's better bets on the board. But Vegas going west to East Coast. Jimmy Garoppolo did play well last week, but Buffalo's defensive line got after the Jets' offensive line, even though they lost that game. And Vegas, we know their defense is not great. This is a game for Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, James Cook, that offense to get right. It's a game for that secondary to put pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo. This game has a feel a blowout to it. It feels like Buffalo needs to play well. Buffalo's been the laughing stock of the week. The way they lost that game Monday night. Everybody's been talking about Josh Allen and his wild turnovers, though we know how talented he is. Can he stop turning the ball over? That's the biggest and boldest question when it comes to this game. Buffalo needs to have a good showing. I think they blow Vegas out, though again, I think there's better lines on the board here. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo plays. This game could be over by halftime, and for Buffalo's sake, if this is a close game, or dare I say, if they lose to Vegas, they are in real trouble the rest of the way, because as we said going into this season, with the Stephon Diggs drama, people questioning if Sean McDermott is the right coach, people questioning if Josh Allen has turned into Carson Wentz. There's a lot of noise up there in Buffalo, and they need to silence the doubters. Now, this game, you may think I'm crazy, but I'm going to take Kansas City, and this is my first best bet of the weekend. I'm actually going to take them to win by more than 3 against Jacksonville. I think they win by at least a touchdown. They re-signed Chris Jones. He is back for 1 year. He did not get a long-term extension, which tells me Kansas City is ready to move off Chris Jones at the end of the year, but they want to try to run it back, and they want to try to win one more Super Bowl, as I said last night on our Championship Rings podcast that once again I do with Josh Unger, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, in collaboration with Voltage Live, the same Voltage Live that collaborates with the Brandon's World podcast. But Jacksonville had a very good offense week 1. We saw ETN, we saw Calvin Ridley, we saw Ingram, we saw Christian Kirk, but their defense is not very good. And Travis Kelce being back, now Chris Jones being back. Doug Peterson has never beaten Andy Reid throughout his career. Does this feel like the best shot? Yes. But Kansas City is 0-1. They do not want to fall to 0-2 because actually being 0-2 in the AFC could ruin your chance of getting home field advantage throughout the postseason. Kansas City knows how important this game is. They know how easy Jacksonville's division/schedule is. They're going to go out. They're going to do some clever things. I think they win by 7 to 10 points. Kansas City looks to right the ship. They got their guys back. They play well. They beat Jacksonville. And again, I'm taking them -3. How about the Chargers? I have them winning. I have them covering. It's another one of my best bets against Tennessee, who I was very down on Tennessee to start the year. I said they have DeAndre Hopkins, who was old and slow. They have Derrick Henry. You can still put 9 in the box against them. I said Ryan Tannehill stunk, and man, did they look awful against New Orleans. They kicked 5 field goals and they still lost the game by a point. DeAndre Hopkins had a good game, but that offense almost looked lifeless. I said on Tuesday, I think expect Malik Willis in there at some point, Will Levis in there at some point, just give you more mobility. I think Ryan Tannehill is just shot. Tennessee is well coached. Their secondary onto the Kevin Byers stinks. We know the Chargers can put points on the board. I think Herbert, Kellen Moore go in there. They throw the ball all the way around the yard. They run the ball with Austin Eckler. They take apart Tennessee at home. I think that this is an easy cover. I think Tennessee's offense is lackluster. I don't think it's dynamic. I think the Chargers, even with their defensive struggles, they go in there and they pound Tennessee. The best thing for the Chargers to do in this game early is get a lead because we know Brandon Staley and crew cannot stop the run. But if you get a big lead, if you get a 10-14 point lead and you take Derrick Henry out of this game, which I think the Chargers will do, that is where the possibility for a rout ensues. Now, Colts at Texans. Before the year started, I had Houston winning this game. I thought CJ Stroud, D'Amico Ryans, I liked the weapons they had. I thought Houston was going to be much improved. And I did not know if Indianapolis was going to start the year with Anthony Richardson. I thought it was going to be Gardner Minshew. I thought it was going to take more time for Shane Steichen to get acclimated. But Indy at Jacksonville on the ropes, if it wasn't for a couple turnovers, Houston struggled against Baltimore. I think DeForest Buckner and that Colts defensive line gets after CJ Stroud, who completely looked over his skis. Now, will they run the ball better with Dameon Pierce, who only had like 40 yards in week 1? They should. They'll take some pressure off him. But I still think Indianapolis now, offensive coach Shane Steichen versus defensive coach D'Amico Ryans. The way Anthony Richardson looked week 1, even in a loss, the future's exciting and bright for the Colts. I think they come out. I think that they get their first win. Steichen played Houston last year as a member of the Eagles. He's got that tape. He's going to use the zone read. He's going to use Michael Pittman. Their run game did not miss a lot without Jonathan Taylor, which is what I predicted going into the year. I have Indianapolis winning this game and again covering the 1-point spread, which is essentially the money line. Now, this is arguably my shock of the week. I'm not going to best bet it because I'm not confident about it. I think Baltimore goes in there. They beat Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati is favored by 3.5, which tells me that they would be favored by 1.5 if this game was in Baltimore. But we saw how the Bengals looked in week 1. Now, generally, good teams, they do bounce back. But with that being said, Joe Burrow is still hurt. Now, Cincinnati had some good games against Baltimore in Burrow's tenure, but Baltimore has also played them really tough the last couple of times. Baltimore won in Baltimore last year, and then obviously in the playoff game, if it wasn't for that great play by Sam Hubbard, maybe, Tyler Huntley and that crew pull off the upset. I think Baltimore knows, hey, we got Cincinnati in week 2. I believe they have the Browns in week 4 in Cleveland. They have Pittsburgh week 5 in Pittsburgh. Those are 3 divisional games in 4 weeks. The easiest one of those, dare I say, maybe here against Cincinnati. You're coming off a win against Houston. Cincinnati does not know that new passing game of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Now, J.K. Dobbins is already down. Ronnie Staley may miss the game, which is a huge disadvantage for Baltimore. They're already suffering the injuries, but I still think it's early in the year enough where Lamar Jackson creates some magic. Cincinnati starts off slow again. I think Burrow and Chase play better, though not great. I think the Ravens pass rush get after Cincinnati. They force them to throw the ball. In the end, Cincinnati may come back. They may win this game, but I think it's closer than people think. And I'm going to take the upset here. I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens. Now we get to the 4 o'clock game, starting off with San Francisco, who is an 8-point favorite on the road against the Rams. So Vegas is still saying they have no respect for the Rams, and we know the Niners, they historically dominate the Rams. Now, I don't like the line again. I think there's better lines, but I think San Francisco wins this game. Until the Rams can beat San Francisco again, they beat them in the NFC Championship game, yes, but Matthew Stafford threw a ball directly to Jaquiski Tartt that would have ended that game for the Rams. So the Rams, they have a bad matchup with San Francisco. They love matching up with Seattle, but they have a bad matchup with San Francisco. Until they beat them in the regular season, I'll take the Niners. Though I think they go from that dominating win in game one. I think the Rams come out. I think they're going to play a better game. I think it comes down to the wire. I think the Rams have a chance to cover that 8-point spread. But in the end, I'm taking San Francisco. Commanders at Broncos. Denver obviously disappointed. Home loss to Vegas in week one. You cannot start the year 0-2 at home. If you have 2 consecutive home games to start the year, if you start 0-2, that's a bad sign for the season. Commanders have a good defensive line. Obviously, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, who I think will be playing, though I'm not sure about that. If they get after Russell Wilson from the Broncos, this is where Denver's going to have trouble. Saying that, though, Washington's offensive line seems to be a mess, even with new OC Eric Bieniemy. They could barely block Arizona's front, which may be the worst front in the league. They barely survived Arizona. They do not look crisp early on. I think, Van Joseph, the new defensive coordinator for Denver, who was the former head coach there, very good defensive mind. I think that they rattle, Sam Howell. They get him to make some turnovers. Denver wins the game. This is the same spread essentially as last week. Denver was favored by 4, I think, against Vegas. This spread is 3.5. I'll take Denver to win, though I wouldn't bet it. I think they win around that margin. This next game here, Giants at Cardinals. Oh boy. The Giants should win this game. Arizona's terrible. Even though they almost pulled it off against Washington last week, they should win this game. If they don't, the Giants are in real trouble. The Giants were embarrassed. I think they come out and they stop Arizona. I'm not going to bet on -6. It seems like an obvious bet. Though, again, I think there's lower numbers on the board where if you like the team, take them. This will probably be my 6th best bet, even more than Chicago, Tampa. I think the Giants just come out and they stop Arizona. All right, Zach Wilson, what do you got for us? Your 9.5-point dogs against Dallas in Dallas. Man, did that line change by like 4 or 5 points when Aaron Rodgers went down. I said it Tuesday night on Championship Rings. The Jets defense is maybe the best defense in football with that secondary. Is there a world out there where they force Dak Prescott to make mistakes? They can win the game 13-10. Yes, I do believe that there is that world out there. Do I see it? No. I think the defense knows they have to play well. The Jets are going to run the ball. They're going to try to keep the game close. I do think there's a good chance they cover the spread. I think it's a very low-scoring game because even though Dallas put up 40 points on the Giants, their offense barely did anything. It was special teams and picks and fumbles and all that from the Dallas defense that sort of set them up in short field situations. So I need to see more out of the Dallas offense. Sauce Gardner could potentially take CeeDee Lamb out of the game, which to me gives a big problem for the Cowboy offense. This is like a Tony Pollard, Dalvin Cook, Brees Hall, very low scoring, run the ball, play defense, 17-10, even 13-6 type ball game. I think Dallas wins. I think the Jets cover, though I would not bet it. I am betting this game. Miami -2 on the road against New England. I know New England played Philly well in week 1, but Bill Belichick had a lot of time to prepare. He's not going to have a lot of time to prepare for Tyreek Hill, who he has struggled with throughout his career. And Jalen Waddle as well. I think Miami just has too much speed offensively. I think Mike McDaniel is going to be ready. I think Mike McDaniel is clever. I think Mac Jones struggles a little bit more against Vic Fangio, who will get up on those receivers more, play a little bit of shell. force Mac Jones to think more tougher throws now that they have a little bit of tape on New England. And we know Bill will not play man-to-man. We're not going to see a lot of man-to-man. But I think it's going to be very hard for New England to stop all those Miami weapons. Belichick has struggled with that San Francisco scheme in the past that Mike McDaniel runs. I really like Miami here, -2 against New England in Foxborough on Sunday night. That is my fourth best bet. Now I'm going to ride with Carolina. Now I'm not going to best bet them, but I'm going to ride with them one more week. I do trust Bryce Young, and as I said before the season, I don't trust Dennis Allen. I don't trust the Saints. They barely beat Tennessee. They did not look great offensively and looked kind of more than what I expected, obviously, between the Tennessee Saints game. I think Bryce Young, Frank Reich in their debut, I think they give the Saints trouble. They are 3-point dogs at home. So Vegas doesn't really like Carolina, but the score does not indicate how close that game was between Atlanta and Carolina last week. I think Bryce Young cuts down the turnovers. I think the Panthers play well. And at home, they beat the Saints in the first half of the Monday night doubleheader. And then my last best bet, the Steelers. I know, I live in Cleveland. I'm a Browns observer, but the Pittsburgh +2.5 to me, I don't understand this line. I get it. The Steelers looked awful against San Francisco. The Browns looked great against Cincinnati. That is a classic flip 'em game, in my opinion, where now everybody's down on Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin's going to say, hey, guys, listen, we could be 0-2 at home. Browns are coming in here. They could be 2-0 in the division. If Pittsburgh loses this game, yes, they are without Deontay Johnson, and yes, they are without Cam Hayward, which is a big factor, but the Steelers are very well coached. They're better coached than Cleveland, and Deshaun Watson did not look great on the rain Sunday in Cincinnati. Maybe it's the rain, maybe it's the offense, who knows? But TJ Watt against the young rookie, Jones, the new right tackle for the Browns, that's going to be a huge test. We'll see if Stefanski can scheme some things up. This just feels like a very bad spot for the Browns, even with Pittsburgh's injuries. Pittsburgh's angry. People have been talking about them all week. People are saying they stink. People are saying this could be the end of Kenny Pickett. Mike Tomlin needs to hire a new OC. They hear all that, and the Browns are hearing that they're the best defense in football. Pittsburgh is going to want to prove that. I think it's a close game. I think Kenny Pickett makes a big play away. Pittsburgh wins between 3 and 7 points, and I'm taking Pittsburgh plus the 2.5. So to recap, my money line predictions: Philly over Minnesota, Detroit over Seattle, Green Bay over Atlanta, Chicago over Tampa, Buffalo over Vegas, Kansas City over Jacksonville, Chargers over Tennessee, Indy over Houston, Baltimore on the road over Cincinnati, San Fran over the Rams, Denver over Washington, Giants over Arizona, Dallas over the Jets, Miami over New England, Carolina at home as a dog over New Orleans, and then the Steelers at home as a dog over Cleveland. My 5 best bets of the weekend are going to be the Chiefs -3 against Jacksonville, the Chargers covering the 3 points on the road against Tennessee, Indianapolis covering the point they are favored by on the road against Houston, as well as Miami on the road against New England -2, and then Pittsburgh, my only dog of the week, +2.5 at home Monday night against the Browns. In week 1, I went 9-7 money line. I went 2 for 5 best bets. That is unacceptable on both parts, and I'm hoping to have a bounce back in week 2. My survivor pool bet last week was Washington over Arizona. This week, I'm actually going to say I think it's Buffalo over Vegas. I could also see Chargers. I like that over Tennessee. And obviously, if you like the Giants, I'd just hammer Arizona and you want to take the Giants now, go ahead. But I think Buffalo, Giants, they need to bounce back in big ways, as well as the Chargers. I think those 3 teams bounce back and have big days this weekend. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon's World podcast right here on YouTube.